Every week, we tell patients to eat more healthy fats. But what does that actually mean? Did you ever wonder why coconut oil is labeled bad while olive oil gets the heart healthy stamp, even though both are plant based? Why does cheese get a place on the charcuterie board, but butter gets the side eye, even though both are saturated fats? Now, here's the thing. Fatty acids aren't just a dietary label. They are key players in inflammation, lipid metabolism, insulin resistance, and even gene expression. Today, we are going past good versus bad and breaking down what clinicians really need to know, from molecular structure to the clinical impact of fatty acid. Welcome to LipidCurious, the podcast dedicated to demystifying lipids for medical boards and real-world clinical practice. I'm your host, Dr. Vishnupriya Pulipati, a board-certified endocrinologist and lipidologist. This is Season 1, Episode 3, Fatty Acids. Here's what we're unpacking today. 1. What are fatty acids? 2. The major types of fatty acids. 3. How they show up in clinical practice. If you are just joining us, welcome. This season builds step by step. So if you want the full foundation, I recommend starting at Episode 1. A quick reminder. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This is not medical advice. And if you haven't already, I invite you to grab the LipidCurious Starter Kit. It's a free download available at www.lipidcurious.com. It is designed for busy clinicians like you. It includes quick reference guides on lipid panels, treatment targets, and common clinical pitfalls. All right, let's get started. What are fatty acids? At their core, fatty acids are a long chain of carbon atoms, like a zigzag string. This has a water-loving carboxylic head and a neutral methyl tail, also called the omega tail. This chain can be anywhere from 4 to 24 carbons long. Now here's the fun fact. Omega-3 and omega-6 gets their names from where the first double bond sits, counting from the methyl tail end. 3 carbons in, it's called omega-3. 6 carbons in, it's called omega-6. Same naming rule, but they have totally different biological effects. More on that in a bit. Functionally, fatty acids are building blocks for a broad range of lipids, such as triglycerides, phospholipids, cholesterol esters, etc. For instance, triglyceride, the body's primary form of stored fat, I imagine triglycerides as happy little jellyfish with 3 fatty acid tentacles attached to a glycerol body through ester linkages. So these are called esterified fatty acids. Now, during fasting, exercise, or stress, your body taps into the stored fat, releasing free fatty acids into the bloodstream as an alternate fuel source. So basically, fatty acids can be as esterified fatty acids attached to something as in triglycerides, or free-floating fatty acids just chilling in the bloodstream as an alternate fuel source. Let's talk about major types of fatty acids. We can classify fatty acids in 2 ways. By how long the carbon chain is, or by how saturated that chain is with hydrogen atoms. For clinical purposes, degree of saturation, the number of double bonds, is the biggest driver of health effects. I suggest you picture this as a simple flow sheet. Start with a box labeled fatty acids. From there, let's draw 3 branches: saturated, unsaturated, and trans fats. 1. Saturated fatty acids. They do not have a double bond. They are straight chains that are tightly packed, so they are solid at room temperature. Example, butter, coconut oil, ghee, etc. They tend to raise LDL cholesterol and, depending on the source, may promote inflammation. United States guidelines suggest keeping saturated fatty acids under 10% of daily calories starting at the age of 2. 2. Unsaturated fatty acids. These have at least one double bond, which creates a kink and keeps them liquid at room temperature. They have two categories, monounsaturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids. The monounsaturated fatty acid has one double bond. Example, olive oil, avocados, nuts. They are linked to lower LDL cholesterol, better insulin sensitivity, and good cardiovascular protection. The polyunsaturated fatty acids have two or more double bonds. These are further subtyped into omega-3s and omega-6s. Omega-3s are found in flax seeds, chia, walnuts, and fatty fish such as salmon. These are the good stuff. They are anti-inflammatory and they are cardioprotective. Omega-6s are found in vegetable oils such as sunflower oil, safflower oil. Omega-6 are essential, but in excess, especially without enough omega-3s, may tip towards inflammation. Now, under the polyunsaturated fatty acids, there's a special category called essential fatty acids. These are basically polyunsaturated fats that the body cannot make because we miss those enzymes. So, they must come from diet. There are two main types of essential fatty acids. Alpha-linolenic acid, which is an omega-3, and linolenic acid, which is omega-6. Next, trans fats. These are the real villains. In trans fats, the hydrogen atoms are located on the opposite side of the double bond, which makes them straight and tight and act like a saturated fat. So they're not good in any ways. They raise the LDL, lower the HDL, and drive inflammation, all the bad things. These are banned in United States, but trace amounts can still appear in imports or old packaged foods. So in conclusion, fatty acids can be branched out into saturated, unsaturated, and trans fats. The unsaturated fatty acids are further split into monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids. The polyunsaturated fatty acids include omega-3s and omega-6, and each of these subtypes accommodates an essential fatty acids which you need from diet. How this shows up in clinic? Let's bring this to life with a quick case. Say Mr. J, a 52-year-old with type 2 diabetes mellitus, comes in with fasting triglycerides of 280 mg per deciliter. He says he's cutting carbs, but proudly tells you that he's putting butter in his coffee and eating more steak because it's keto. A look at his diet reveals a lot of saturated fats, very little omega-3, and almost no fiber. So what's happening here? His triglycerides are essentially carrying saturated fatty acids. Remember, triglyceride is that jellyfish with these 3 tentacles. So those 3 tentacles are saturated fatty acids because the butter is all that. This is shaping his lipid profile into a more atherogenic direction. His diet is skewed more pro-inflammatory with no counterbalance from omega-3s. And in fasting, his free fatty acids are likely high, which is a sign of insulin resistance. So how can we suggest adjustment? Instead of telling him to go low fat, the focus is on being fat smart. Let's suggest favoring fatty fish such as salmon, olive oil, flax, chia seeds, avocados, walnuts. Limit red meats, butter, palm oil, and avoid trans fats. Actually, the Mediterranean diet kind of gets this mix right. They have a lot of healthy fats, low processed fats, and they have better heart and brain outcomes. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The type of fatty acid matters for labs, inflammation, and cardiometabolic risk. Helping patients spot and balance the right fats is where lipid science turns into real medicine. All right, folks. Next episode is in 2 weeks, and we'll be talking about cholesterol. We're going to figure out if it's a friend or a foe, and we're going to understand its role in health and disease. Thanks for joining me on LipidCurious. If you found today helpful, I'd love to hear your feedback, suggestions, or even if you just want to connect, you can reach me at hello@lipidcurious.com. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss what's next. Until next time, stay curious and stay confident. Signing off, Dr. Pulipati.